9 different patterns that really are noticeable about letter name alphabetic spellers. Let's zoom in on some of these. There we go. The way that letter name alphabetic spellers use long vowels is that they freely make use of them just as the letter name. So wheel and safe. Now it doesn't matter that we think of this vowel consonant, consonant vowel consonant construction appears to be a short vowel structure. But the child is just making use in a kind of telegraphic way of the consonants in order to be able to sound out this long A sound for safe. The child doesn't know anything about silent letters yet. All right, let's go down to short vowels. Short vowels are really, really subtle. They are not the letter name. In other words, they're not the letter name A. Long vowels make it very simple that way. Children tend to shift short vowels. They tend to shift short vowels toward the head of the alphabet. So let's take the example that I've given you. A short E will tend to shift to an A. In this case, bed, it gets written as B-A-D. That short vowel shifting occurs because of the proximity of the long vowel A to the short E as pronounced in the mouth. Being able to feel things in the mouth is really important. Let's show you why. There's a linguistic construction called flap, and that refers to double T or double D in the middle of a word. So what I want you to do is kind of play along with me here and say the word butter. Are you saying it with a D or a T? So let me rewrite that. Are you saying butter with a T or a D? Well, in fact, you're saying it with more likely a D sound. So children tend to spell butter as this simplified invented spelling, B-U-D-R. So let's go and say the rest of these words together. Butter, ladder, middle, and cattle. And try to feel what your tongue is doing. Butter. The tip of your tongue tends to tap that ridge behind your teeth. And that's a similar movement for both the double T and the double D in words. And they tend to substitute wholesale. They can't really detect which letter is being used. Preconsonantal nasals are N and M before the end of a word. These are very subtle sounds. So what happens? M and N tends to get omitted in these words. Let's look at the words I mean. Don't, bump, sank, sank. Okay, now if you listen to sank, you don't hear a N sound in sank. And the same thing in find, find. You don't hear a N sound. Because you don't, they tend to drop it out. Past tense affix, ED at the end of a word. In some of these constructions, you hear a T sound and not an ED. Let's look at them. Let's read them together. Hiked, licked, jumped, hopped, laughed, passed. So you hear a T sound here. I said licked, but that would have worked also. Liked, it also produces this T sound over here. So the substitution that you're going to see in invented spellings are T's at the end of words. There's nothing deviant about this. It takes a teacher to show the constructions of ED on a past tense using a word wall or using word sorting, plus the reading that the child does. Okay, R-dominated vowels are very simple to understand. They tend to overwhelm the previous vowel. So let's take a look at the word turn. Turn, and now let's look at bigger. That sound in bigger is created by that R, and children hear the R but what they don't hear is the previous vowel. Now, there are a whole series of words that makes that are so difficult to hear. So let's take a look at hurt, shirt, fur, and worm. All of these are making the same sound. It's all the sound. And look how indeterminate the vowels are. And I can also write her, hurt, shirt, fur, worm, and her. Those are all creating the sound. In sonorants, you have the letters L, M, and N also blurring or obliterating the sound of any vowel before those sounds. So we're looking at special, wagon, Indian, candle, and firm. So what happens here is you're getting the obliteration of the vowel. You don't see the vowel show up in wagon in the last syllable. And for Indian, it's a very telegraphic use of the letter names. NDN. That's a letter name construction. Now, affrication is where you're using J, CH, TR, or DR. I want you to think about, let's say the word drive together. And I want you to think just about the tip of your tongue. Drive, drive. Okay, your tongue is dragging across the ridge behind your front teeth. That ridge there is an articulatory organ. It allows you to be able to make all sorts of different sounds perfectly. Look at the word dragon, dragon. Children tend to associate these affrication sounds with the letter J or CH. They pull them together to use that. Don't begin to think that these are deviant in any way. And lastly, you have schwa. Schwa is a unstressed vowel. Because it's unstressed, you can't really decide what vowel is being used. So what do children usually do? They either substitute or they eliminate. They drop it out. So decide. This E here is a schwa. Decide. You can't hear it so the child overly relies on the letter name D to be able to produce that sound. Here's another one. Again. There's your schwa. Rocket. Okay, here's the schwa in rocket. And not heard, it can be freely substituted like that. So why do children spell this way? Because they're using the available sounds that they've learned. And the first sounds they learn are the letter names. This is only an approximation of the English alphabet. As you go on, you're exposed to many more words. Teachers talk about sounds all the time. Teachers use word walls. Teachers use word banks. And teachers in particular are using word sorting activities to be able to create families that children can then latch onto and be able to figure out whole patterns of words. And lastly, I want to say is that this process proceeds by being able to use a lot of writing. That the writing classroom, the teachers who use writing, every time a child writes down a word, they have to make a decision. It's almost like phonemic awareness training. So let's say we're going to write the word decide. The child is having to, every sound in there, the child is figuring out decide. They're having to make decisions, and they usually latch on first to letter names.